Hello, welcome to the Agile Uprising Podcast. I'm Andy Cleff, recording from the upper deck, overlooking the garden on a gorgeous day, to dig into a topic near and dear to me: team engagement, health, and happiness. A blog post on this subject is one of the most frequently visited on my website. Who knew that measuring team's vitality could cultivate such interest? My goal today is to encourage you to move beyond just reading or listening about it, perhaps nudging your bias to action to implement one or two team engagement feedback loops. I'll be sharing an overview of some of the many creative data gathering approaches you can draw inspiration from. We'll cover the nuances between engagement and happiness in the context of teams, and discuss nurturing resilience through an experimental mindset. If you aren't quite sure that measuring team engagement matters, consider the results of Gallup's Q12 survey, where they've been gathering data since about 1990. They use a set of 12 questions that get at different drivers of engagement, stuff like having clear roles, feeling recognized, believing in the company mission. And the most recent report that came out in January of this year showed rather distressing info. In 2023, only 33% of employees self-reported they were engaged. 16% self-reported they were actively disengaged, which means 51% are going, meh. Do you know where your teams are on that scale? If you're in a leadership role, what impact are you having on the social aspects that drive team health and engagement? Employee engagement is one of those necessary conditions for things like predictability, quality, innovation. If you aren't happy with the business outcomes that you're getting today, look upstream. Before we dig into some fun metrics, let's get on the same turf definition-wise. What do we mean about team engagement, health, happiness, resilience? Let me start with the team part. This is people who work together to achieve a common goal. This construct of team as a container, I believe, applies at all levels of an org. The individual development squad, a team of teams, the executive leadership team. In my mind, there's an important distinction between a team and a work group. Keeping with my gardening theme, work group, more like individuals tending their own separate vegetable plots without much overlap or cross-pollination required. Whereas a team is akin to folks cultivating and nurturing an interconnected landscape, working together with constant collaboration. By engagement, I'm referring to having energized, committed people who find genuine meaning and motivation in their work and their shared goals and vision. An engaged team is all in. They're able and willing to go that extra mile once in a while and deliver great results. They're resilient and effective as a unit. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. A disengaged group, on the other hand, displays apathy, bare minimum effort, poor collaboration, negative attitudes, lack of ownership and pride. You probably hear management complaining about the lack of accountability while looking at quality, predictability, customer stat, innovation being in the crapper. Spoiler alert here. Team engagement and health are impacted by the team's history combined with their environment. Combine the two, nurture or inhibit performance. Look out if environment lacks what's needed for vigorous engagement and flourishing results. The equivalent of sun, shade, water, and nutrients in my garden. In the workplace, it's the full stack of socio-technical things. The processes, the procedures, the norms, the routines, and yes, the accumulated organizational debt. Some of those things, the team, whatever your context, has direct control over. Others, the team will have no control yet. Yet is a powerful concept to unlocking agency and collective change, and maybe your next experiment needs to be moving a fence. Anyway, here's another key distinction I want to make. Health and engagement isn't about happiness. Sure, Happy teams might be great, but they can actually become complacent and stagnant over time, especially if folks are enjoying the view from the top of the food chain and ad revenue is growing like weeds in August. Rest and vest kicks in. So the goal shouldn't be forcing some fake version of happiness onto people and teams. Yes, joy is important. Yes, it's important to nurture the right conditions, but you have to focus on healthy engagement. So when the climate changes, the team has the resilience to handle it. A certain degree of positive tension builds a team's ability to deal with changes. Exercising continuous learning and improvement muscles, building that resilience, always capable of tackling the wicked problems that come with dancing in the complex domain. One other thing to keep in mind, I've mentioned the concept of team applies as a container in all layers of your organization, squad, team of teams, executive leadership, and the elements of engagement, health, resilience. I believe they're common across all these layers, but with some subtle variations. One important difference, the cycle time for change varies quite a bit depending on which layer you're engaged in, typically getting longer the higher up the ladder you go. At the squad level, the cycle time's anywhere from, sadly, sometimes quarterly, more common monthly, and perhaps in some places weekly. At the system layer, cycle time for change can range from, annual to quarterly. But think how awesome a monthly cadence of small incremental improvements could be in the compound interest. At the leadership level, it's 3 to 5 years. It's like planting asparagus from seed. So take a moment to ponder. How would you define a thriving, engaged team for your specific context? And what sort of time frame for feedback loops would be appropriate when you get to designing data gathering instruments? Perspectives on this will vary widely depending on your organization's size, culture, and objectives. Over the years, brilliant minds have developed numerous models for measuring team engagement and health. It's important to understand that these models shouldn't be treated as one-size-fits-all prescriptions, but rather as idea starters that you need to customize based on your unique team context, the specific dynamics, challenges, and goals. Let me highlight a few of the more well-known models to give you a sense of some of the creative range out there. One of the most referenced is the Spotify Health Check model. It looks across areas like technical quality, team cohesion, ability to release, and more, using a simple red, yellow, green scale. Adding in handy directional arrows, it also shows trends over time, and it combines multiple teams into a roll-up or systems view. Not for comparison, but to surface common patterns. It's a very flexible concept, and it's easily adapted to your local context. Then you've got the happiness index. That was pioneered by the folks at Crisp. There are a ton of other creative approaches. Nintendo's got a well-being model. Another one that comes from Nomad 8 builds on Daniel Pink's concept of autonomy, mastery, and purpose, extending it to the team. There's all sorts of pulse surveys that teams have cooked up. So see the show notes where I've got a list in my blog article. If I've not included something that you think is valuable, ping me or add a comment to the post. The good news is that all these example team health metrics are leading indicators. The bad news, once again, there's no one-size-fits-all. While you can borrow from someone else's garden, you've got to be willing to cross-pollinate, come up with something that works with your team's unique combination of soil, topography, climate, and people. This begs the question, who might you have a chat with about some of these models to come up with an approach that aligns with your team's unique situation and dynamics? Finding the right thought partner can be crucial for customizing concepts to fit your context. Maybe make it a full team exercise. Whomever you team up with, however you approach it, whatever you decide, the key is to plant experiments for learning. The data collected should spark some productive conversations, generate some insights, not be yet another cold survey exercise or worse, wielded as a rock to throw as judgment and punishment. This, as you can guess, requires an environment of psychological safety, where people feel free to exercise their voice, not stay in acquiescent silent mode. They need to be able to highlight issues and opportunities to share wild ideas without fear of getting metaphorically trampled down or yanked out like a weed. Experimenting means not getting things right all the time. It means getting things wrong a lot, just doing it fast and cheap. So that means promoting a safe-to-fail culture filled with honest conversations. So however you launch that next experiment around team health checks, be upfront that the plan is to tweak the approach as you go. What would need to be true in your context to cultivate that psychologically safe environment required to get honest team engagement experiments off the ground? Creating an environment of trust rarely happens overnight. What is the next step you need to take? At the end of the day, the whole purpose of measuring engagement is to gain insights and stimulate that honest dialogue about the good, the bad, and the weird stuff. Human feelings. And this hopefully leads to bite-sized experiments, pragmatic actions that improve team health over time with some qualitative and quantitative feedback loops. What might this look like in real life? Let me share some of my own stories. A team I worked with visualized their health trends via data collected through the Team Mood app. See the show notes for a link. And they noticed a regular pattern. They were collecting data almost daily. A regular pattern of frowny faces with a cadence. And that cadence corresponded with the dreaded change acceptance board cycle. And this raised the team's collective awareness that their release process was a real struggle. And that led them to revamp their DevOps practices, branching strategies, code coverage, lint checking, all kinds of good stuff. And boom, bye-bye to integration and deployment headaches. CAB became a rose garden. All right, just kidding. There's still a few thorns to be careful of. Another team I had the pleasure of coaching realized they weren't allocating enough time for learning and mentoring. It showed up in the mastery category of their data. So they designed brown bag knowledge sharing sessions, built them into their backlog, and pulled them in as part of every iteration. Yep, Jira tickets were written. Calendar events were created, shared widely. Yet another team picked up on the lack of meaningful recognition and appreciation through their survey instrument. And as a result, they made celebrating wins a more conscious part of their daily tag-ups, as well as their sprint retros. They rang a gong of appreciation, and the good vibes spread over the entire office. Those are a few examples, and I hope they encourage you to take action. Remember, team engagement and health metrics are leading indicators. Use them as insights to modify the soil incrementally and help nurture strong, resilient, vibrant teams over time. Let me try to harvest the key takeaways from today's episode, things to hopefully help us collectively move the needle on the next Gallup Q12 survey. Measuring team engagement and health shouldn't just be a numbers game. Make it a catalyst for learning and improvement. Use it at all flight levels in your organization. Don't stop at the development squad. Roll up data to look at the system. Keep going up. Engage leadership and honor the natural rhythms for each of these layers. Frame all things as experiments, engagement data gathering, visualization, action items, and be open to course correcting the approach as needed. Some things will sprout, others will never germinate. Embrace the green thumb of inspect and adapt. Most importantly, cultivate safe-to-fail environments where teams have a sufficient agency, with appropriate guardrails, of course, to navigate their path of continuous improvement. And don't forget to celebrate the learnings a little bit more frequently. That's all for this episode. Thanks for lending me your ears. I promise that's the last gardening reference. If you stuck around this long, give us a review or a rating. If you'd like to share your own wild and crazy experiments around team engagement, please join our Discord server. Lots of signal there, very little noise. And finally, support from listeners like you help us cover our hosting costs. See the show notes for details on how you can become a patron. Until next time, This is the Agile Uprising Podcast, signing